Right, good afternoon. February 16, 2024, that's when this class is being recorded. All right, so this is the second part of the conventional telephone systems for this class of this year, 2024. We're going to be doing some jumping between the slides because there's some stuff that we already have covered and some other things that are associated with that need to be covered in greater detail. So let's what was it? One of the YouTubers. Let's get started. Okay. All right. All right. So this is pretty much a picture of what a normal telephone system, regular telephone system, usual telephone system would look like. Now, on this picture, I have something that's called Northstar Meridian 616 telephone system. 6 because 1, 2, 3, it's capable of 6 CO lines. In this case, they plug in right with the telephone jacks. And here is the connection for the Amphenol connector that is being brought out to the BIGS frame. Some of the BIGS frame have additional attachment that you can connect Amphenol connector to Amphenol connector with this already being pre-wired. However, for the most part, you're going to see just the 25 pair cable, just like the one that we have terminated. On one side, you're going to have, oops, what did I press? On one side, oh yeah, wrong key. I was right. On one side, you're going to have the Amphenol connector, and on the other side, you're going to have the BIGS 25 pair frame that you're going to terminate. Now, you can terminate the RJ21 cable here and plug it into this outlet of the telephone system, or you can buy a pre-made cable with the Amphenol connector, and they come in different lengths. You can order 6 footers, 10 footers, maybe 20 footers, or sometimes custom length, or sometimes you can just buy a regular, let's say you're not going to use more than 20 feet that and you can just cut it to length and terminate the other end on the BIGS frame, just like the way we terminated our cable during the labs, the lab that we currently are going through. Some of us already have done it, and some of us are going to finish that next week, all right? Or next week, right after the Slack week that we have, okay? So that's basically, that's how this thing is terminated. Now, on the side of this side of the Amphenol connector, you're going to see something like this. Right? Here's the pair. Here are the pairs. See, here's the white group. Here's the red group, and so on. And the pinout of that is blue-white here and white-blue here. So here's the solid, here's the stripe. Orange, solid, orange stripe, and so on, which corresponds to this kind of a color code on that we're fanning out onto the BIGS frame. Right? So here's blue, orange, green, brown, slate of the white group. Here's the red group, black, yellow, and violet. Okay, so that's how the pinouts are solved. Now let me go back to the here. All right. Now in this particular system, now you could have a different phone system. I'm just giving you the example of this particular one, but it could be any other phone system like Panasonic, Toshiba, or some other brands that I don't even know or remember. But for the most part, it would be Meridian, Panasonic, Toshiba, right? Phone systems. Here is the pinout of what the pairs are when they are coming out of the Amphenol connector from the phone system. Pair 1, extension 1, pair 2, extension. Now, since this one has 16 extensions, the first 16 pairs are the extensions. There's 16 phones that can be connected, and each telephone takes one pair. It's a proprietary telephone system that connects just the Northern Meridian phones that look like this. That's what it means, proprietary phone set, as opposed to a single line set, which is this one here, looks like that, and this is just a regular POTS phone that you can buy in any hardware store or whatnot that understands the POTS signal, which is just a ring and tip of the central office line, the CO line. So this one here is connected straight to the CO line, not connected to any of the stuff. And we'll talk about that. Why is it like that? Why is it connected like this? All right. So the first pairs. Now, this is the pinout for this particular phone system. If there is any other phone system that you're dealing with, then you're going to have to look up the documentation on how things are solved this way here. Also, see, these extensions here are by default number 21, 22, and 20. These are the double-digit extensions. Some software will give you 3-digit extension, depending on what software is installed on this phone system. Some of them will have 3-digit extensions. Some of them are going to have 4-digit extensions. It depends on the software, as I said. So if it's 2-digit, it's going to be 21, 22. These are the extension numbers of the telephone sets. So if you want to dial, if you're intercom or inner office dialing, just an extension, you pick up the phone, you hit the intercom button, and you dial 21 if you want to dial one of this one, if you want to dial this one, and so on. If it were 3-digit extensions, the first one would be 221, 222, and so on. And if there were 4-digit extensions, there were 2221, 22. It's just the way they numbered those things. Now you can get into programming, and you can change the extension numbers to whatever you want, as long as you keep the digit numbers that are assigned to, like, if this is a software that involves 2 digits, then you're going to have to program this thing with just 2 digits, okay, and so on. Now here in this particular system, these are nothing, and here is the external paging audio. So that is the output that goes into whatever system you have here. That is your PA system, and this would go to the audio input of the paging amplifier. That's if you want to bypass all this stuff here, if you want to bypass the paging interface. Yes, you can connect the audio output. If the phone system has an audio output, and most of them do, you can connect this thing right to the amplifier. And you're going to have a one-zone simple paging system. You can't split into zones without a paging interface. So if it's a small office that everybody receives all the pages, no problem. You can have it like that, all right? External paging contact closure, just a review from the last time we saw each other in person. In order for the page to go through the speakers, audio page, like so-and-so line 1, you know, so-and-so come to the office or whatever, right? Then the input has to be activated. But the paging system doesn't know when to activate this thing or not. There are 2 ways of solving this thing. The amplifier can have something that's called a gated input, like a gate. And you can adjust the gate so it is going to ignore certain signal strength, which would be the noise that is present on the input. And you're always going to have some noise, white noise, pink noise, audio kind of thing that the input would pick up along the electronic lines and interference from whatnot. Because if you don't have that, and this input is always turned on, waiting, you know, if the page comes through, well, then you're going to hear a bunch of noise and hiss through the speakers, and that's very unprofessional, very annoying, and whatnot. So you could have a gated input, or what you could have is some of the paging amplifiers do have the input enable contact closures. You can just run a wire between those two terminals and join the wire, and that is going to enable the input, the paging input. Or you can join those two terminals by closing a relay contact like this one here, external paging contact closure. So normally by default this follows the page. So if the page is activated, the contact closures are activated automatically, enabling the input on the amplifier, so the page goes through, and then when you hang up the phone after you have done the page, then these contacts open, and this input, whatever it is, the paging input, is being disabled, so you got nice silence over those speakers. How do you do the page? Well, if you connect this amplifier straight to this pair right now here, the audio, then there is a feature that you have to dial up on the phone if the phone has permissions, because you can program the phones to have no permission to page. If the phone is programmed that is able to do pages, then you press the sequence of buttons that would call up the feature of paging, and then you speak. Now, if you don't go straight to the audio input from those audio output terminals, but if you go through something that's called ATA adapter, which is analog telephone adapter, then you go about the paging a little bit different. This ATA adapter is an adapter that converts the signal that is being understood by this phone system, KSU or PBX. KSU stands for Key Service Unit, PBX stands for Private Branch Exchange. Same thing, really, right? But bigger systems we have tendencies calling them PBX, and the smaller systems, we have tendencies to call them KSUs. But you can use that term, the acronym, interchangeably, PBX or KSU. So the paging interface for this particular system is made by the same company, and this ATA adapter is supposed to work with this system in order to convert the signal that this system understands into POTS, plain old telephone service. The ATA adapter acts as a telephone set. So when you plug that in to one of those, you run the wires out of the pairs, bring it into the outlet somewhere, or you can just make a wire that put the RJ11 jack onto the wire, and the other side you punch into that pair of whatever the extension. When that thing is plugged in, this phone system is going to think that a phone is plugged into it, and it's going to treat it as a phone. And this really has the guts of the telephone set, except it has no handset, and it has no keypad, has no display, it's just a box. It has its own extension depending on where you punch it, or you can program the number. If you want to change it, you can change the extension. What happens when you dial the extension of the ATA? Well, this is going to produce a ringing signal on its POTS output or jack. It will have two jacks, one jack to connect to this phone system, and the other one jack, which is going to be POTS. It's a translator between POTS and the signal protocol that is being produced by this phone and understood by the phone system. So when you dial the extension of that, it's going to produce a ringing signal on the output, which is the POTS jack. That is connected to the paging interface. One of those, you're going to have to look up which one it is. And then that paging interface is programmed to receive or react to the ringing signal produced by this here device. And once it senses the ringing signal, it is going to automatically answer, and it's going to produce a pre-announcing or pre-annunciation tone or pre-announced tone, which sounds like that. Beep. Okay, that's it. All right. That could mean more than one thing, depending on how this thing is programmed. And however you are going to program the paging interface, you're going to have to instruct the people that work for the company that this thing is installed at the company or whatever it is. Right? Now, if it's just a single zone, it's programmed as a single zone, nothing else, then the beep means, yes, I picked up, you can speak now, and you will be heard over the speakers. Or if you program it to be zoned system, divided into different zones, like this could be the main hallway. Another one branch like this could be the offices. Another branch like this could be shipping and receiving. Another one could be production hall, and so on. Then the amplifier is connected not to the input of or the output of this phone system here. It is connected to the paging interface, and the paging interface is going to decide which branches or which zones to include in that particular page. So if you program this paging interface to, if you press after the pre-announced tone, if you press 1, you're going to get hallways. If you press 2, you're going to get the offices. If you press 3, you're going to get something else, whatever other zone. Or maybe there's going to be a 9 or other whatever number programmed here that is going to give you an all-call page that's going to connect all the branches together. Right? So that's why for the bigger systems, we need to use paging interfaces, and this is one of the most popular ones by a company called Bogen, B-O-G-E-N. All right. Now, don't worry. Okay, yeah, there it is. See, Bogen. Right. Now, as far as learning how to program this thing, companies like Bogen or Panasonic or Toshiba, or, well, Norton Telecom doesn't exist anymore, so you're going to probably have to be trained by somebody, because those systems, even though the Norton Telecom is not in business anymore, or so I heard, you can still get some of those systems, either used ones, or some of them, I don't know, are being produced offshore, and you can get, maybe you can still get some of like a brand new produced one, because those systems were so good that there's such a high demand on those. Plus, sometimes you're going to see a lot of those still being in use, existing systems. And so for, in order to learn how to program the North Star Meridian system, you're going to have someone walk you into that and teach you how to program this thing, which is not that hard to do. As far as any other companies that are existing companies, they will actually provide, they do provide occasional, or periodical, regular training sessions for companies who distribute and sell their systems. Right? So it's the communications or telecommunications business. It's it's a forever learning, kind of ongoing learning thing, because there could be some other system that comes up, some new system, and then they want to sell those things, so they will organize training sessions for the employees of the companies who are selling their systems. Right? So. But don't worry, you're not going to be thrown into the dark and you're not going to be expected to know everything at once. Right? All right, so what else do we have here in the big picture? We have, of course, the bunch of telephones, because the purpose of the telephone system is to have telephones, right? That's the main idea of it, but that's not the only one, because we got the paging system. Now, what else can be connected to it? A voicemail can be connected to the phone system. And there are certain ways of connecting the voicemail. Some of the voicemail gets connected just like an extension, and sometimes there is a specific wire with the biggest PBXs or KSUs that there's a connection for the voicemail box. And this is just like, it does have a hard drive, and it does have, it's a voicemail, so it records audio, and he speaks audio, and it has to be programmed certain way. The programming voicemail is a little bit more complex than I think. It's probably this is the most complex thing, programming the voicemail, because sometimes you want the voicemail to pick up, sometimes you want the receptionist to pick up, and sometimes you want the receptionist to pick up during the working hours, like 9 to 5, and then after hours you want the voicemail to pick up, and things like that. So the programming of the voicemail could be a little bit more complex. All right, so that's what's involved there. Then what we have the single line telephone sets. You can plug in another ATA adapter to one of the extensions, and you can do, well, for the most part you can do two things, except for the so we already know that we can connect a paging interface, but you can connect other things through ATA. What does ATA have again? It has a connection that connects to the phone system, and it has a POTS jack. So it's a translator between the POTS and whatever the system produces. If this were a Panasonic system, you would have a ATA adapter produced by Panasonic for that particular system. But all of those have a POTS jack on the output. So you can plug in a regular telephone set. Let's say you could have this one here in the lobby, that it could be office building, that the offices are closed to the public. But if you want to come over and see the reception, if you have an appointment or whatever, for whatever reason you need to enter the building, you would have that in the lobby, this phone's in the lobby, and with maybe some instructions that to dial reception, press so and so. Or it could be programmed as a hotline, which means as soon as you pick up, it dials by itself. It could be reception, dial the reception, or something else. We can program any extension to dial automatically. Or you can connect a door station that that you would press the button, and this would also hot dial the whatever extension, usually a reception. Those are also popular in the truck entrances at the truck gates. If there's a big company that they have a lot of transport trucks delivering and taking out goods for export or for sale, then if there's any truck that comes over to the truck gate, this would be raised to the height that it would be presented to the driver. So the driver just has to unroll the window and press the button, and this would also be programmed as a hot dial. So it dials whatever the extension. It probably would be the supervisor on duty that supervises the shipping and receiving, or whatever other extension, reception or whatnot. So they can open the gate for them remotely or whatnot. So these are very popular things. And also here what we have is a night ringer, auxiliary ringer. That can be installed in either noisy locations, like for example, well, there was a big company that Oakville, that one there. Don't want to say the name of the company, but huge plant, and they had some sort of a mixing tower to mix a bunch of chemicals and shoot them down the pipes, so they can produce all kinds of goodies out of that. And on top of that, there was a mixing tower, and the mixing tower was very noisy, and there were people in there, but sometimes they need to be called. So they would not hear the regular phone ringing. They would have to have that loud ringer installed with the strobe light flashing. When the phone was ringing, this thing would flash and make bigger noise than the regular phone. So that's where would that be connected? Right here in this particular says auxiliary ringer contacts. Okay, so this we just like a relay contact, and this here. This ringer would be plugged in with a separate power adapter, and if the contacts were closed, that thing would, well, activate. Right? Now, Uh, So that's as far as the auxiliary ring. Okay, okay. Here's what I was gonna say. The paging, the auxiliary ringer contacts can be programmed in the telephone system to follow. Like, let's say there is a phone at the mixing tower, and you want that auxiliary ringer to be associated with that phone. That auxiliary ringer can be programmed to follow any of the extensions. And in this one here, you only have one auxiliary ringer contact. In some of the bigger systems, you can have multiple auxiliary ringer contacts. Or you could have another different auxiliary ringer contact that is receiving POTS signal, and you would have that connected through ATA adapter. Right? So depending on what function you want, they come in different configurations. Right? So that's in an, okay, well, there's one more thing here. Here says 911 phone, and look how this thing is connected. These lines here are connected to the phone system. If there is any of the phone that needs to select an outside line, you press the button that says outside line or a line pull. And those lines, let's say the company only uses 3 lines. So you would have line 1, line 2, line 3, and these would be not used. And those would be connected in the line pull A, for example. And line pull A could be programmed to dial 9. So you would pick up the phone, go into the intercom mode, dial 9, and you would select the line pull A, which those lines would be connected to or programmed in line pull A. So dial 9, and it's going to pick up any of those, whichever line is available. So if maybe someone is talking on line 1, then if line 2 is free, it's going to select line 2 or line 3, and it's going to just hunt for lines. If all the lines are busy, then you're going to get the message, all lines are busy, you know. So then you're going to hang up and try again in a few minutes. Right? Sometimes you're going to have indicators, because those buttons here, these buttons, you can program to be anything. It could be programmed to have a line. So this could be programmed as line 1, line 2, and line 3. And if the line 1 is busy, you're going to see a little triangle here, solid triangle. That means someone is talking on that line. And so on. And if you see that all the triangles are lit, that means all the lines are busy. You can select, in this way you can select any line by pressing that, or you can press 9 to get any available line. So there's more than one. Sometimes you don't have those programmed in. You know? Those could be features, like one of the buttons can be programmed as press that to page. So you don't have to press any combination of buttons to get the paging feature. You can just program that. One of the buttons can be programmed to dial certain extension. If you talk to that person often, then you know, and different other features can be programmed for these buttons here. Right? Here is the 911. So now these are all those lines. Okay, these lines here can be not used, or if you want to, you can purchase additional phone lines and you can include them in line pool B, for example. So then line pool A, to access line pool A, you would press 9 to get out. If you want to access line pool B, you would press 8 to get out. Right? 8 to call out or select an outside line. Some of the telephones would have permission or would be programmed to only be able to dial line pool A. Some of the other phones could be programmed to only be able to access line pool B. And some of them could be programmed to be able to access both. It's quite flexible. Right? And then we're going to come back to those. when we get to the rollover sequence. But look at this. Here is something that's called a 911 phone, and this here is connected straight to CO line. Straight to CO line, bypassing everything. The purpose of that is if, in case of emergency, sometimes you're required to install those lines, so in case of emergency, they can be used. Why is this thing bypassing everything? Well, CO lines are independent lines. They are powered by the central office, another building. They're powered from outside. They have nothing to do with any of the inside power wiring or whatsoever. So if the power goes out in the building, that CO line will still be operational. No problem. Yeah. So, power goes out, somebody needs to dial 911, they pick up the phone, then dial 911. Why do we need to have those in the commercial facilities? Because the owner of the building or owner of the company cannot count on someone having a working cell phone. Yes, people do have working cell phones, but they're their working cell phones, and they are not responsible for the company's safety. They are the private phones. Yes, they can use them to dial 911, but the owner of the company cannot count on that. Right? So they are required to install 911 phones and distribute them physically, so they can be accessed very easily by anyone who's in the area. Right? So sometimes you have to have more than one 911 phone, depending on how big the facility is. One thing, those single line sets can be daisy chained, which means there's a CO line coming in, connected to one phone, parallel that to another telephone jack, connect another phone, parallel to another telephone jack to another phone, and so on. However, this should not be done when installing 911 phones, because if there is a 911 phone somewhere in the facility, and then you use the same line branching off that parallel connection to another phone which is in completely somewhere else, far from this location, then you can pick up and use any of those phones. However, if somebody doesn't hang up this phone properly, which means going to be off hook, then that phone further down the line is useless. You can't dial out on that. So for that reason, every single 911 phone which is connected to a CO should have its own dedicated CO line. So that's the idea of a 911 phone. Right? Now let's take a look at some of the, because I promised you we're going to come back to that. Here, we're just going to spend the rest of this class talking about what these are here. And since I'm going to require, I'm just going to fire up Photoshop so I can use I can use it as a whiteboard. Okay, once this thing is firing up, we're going to start talking about this thing. All right, so here's some, oh, there you go, out you go. Here's some popular terminology that is associated with telephony or the telephone systems, well, commercial or otherwise. And we're going to go one by one and explain. Some of those things we already know what they are, right? All right, so here is a pulse type dialing or tone dialing, DTMF. DTMF stands for tone type dialing. Well, no, dual tone multi-frequency dialing. What does that mean? All right, let's start with the pulse first. In the good old days, when there was just a bunch of rotary phones, and if you wanted to have a phone in your house, you would call the company and they would install that thing usually somewhere in your kitchen. and that would be your house phone. And if you want to talk to your girlfriend or boyfriend, you would have to have a long handset cord so you can lock yourself in the closet and talk. Right? That was the good old days. Right? But at that time, the technology was just for pulse dialing. All right. First, there was this. This is why Jay is asking, why was it standard to be in the kitchen? Any specific reason? Um, I don't know. It was probably maybe because kitchen was the central point of the house, somewhere you can reach anywhere, or maybe some people would spend most of the time in the kitchen. It would be just a convenience thing. Maybe kitchen you would have countertop with bunch of notepads and things. Sometimes you would be in the hallway, but well, no, I think some people chose to have that thing somewhere in the kitchen. All right, so there you go. So it used to be this. All the phones were connected manually. Right? There was a whole working culture with that. Then from this, look, we would get to this here already. So this would be almost like a hybrid station because over here you see there is a rotary dial already. Right? So this was a hybrid thing. This was more modern than this here. Then the dial tone came to town. All right. So what happened is that instead of having telephones connected manually from one to another, you wouldn't have to use the operator. The operators would still be working, but they would be working, patching and connecting you through some international conversations or maybe between some cities that you would still need an operator to make it a connection. But later on, for the most part, if you want to dial in the same city or even later on between the other cities in the same country, you would use the rotary dial and the dial tone was present. So over here, there was no dial tone. You pick up the handset and the light lights up. One of the operators picks up the call and says, "Number, please." Later on, when that was eliminated, the dial tone was introduced and it was just like dial tone, right? That's what it sounded like, right? And you would have to break the dial tone. How would you break the dial tone? By dialing the first number. Then dial tone would be broken, would be silent, and then the dialing sequence would be executed. The rotary dialing would be sensing pulses, which means the phone line would be interrupted in a timely manner so many times. So if you wanted to dial number 8, it would be like you would put your finger in one of these spots where it says number 8. You would turn that thing right to the end as far as you can go and release. And this would be returning to the original position with a certain speed, and as it returns, it would interrupt the phone line as many times as the number is. So if you would just dial number 3, you would just go tick tick tick, right? If you dial 5, it would be tick 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 tick. Right? So if you dial number 3 as the first number, it would interrupt the phone 3 times, and then it will be waiting for another number to be dialed. And depending on how many numbers the central office was designed to dial, that's how things would be, how the dialing would be accomplished. Well, so that's what will happen. Now, later on, in order to speed things up, because with so many phone calls, speed of connection is, that was important. The bigger the city, the faster switching you need to service as many clients as possible. Where are we here? There you go. So then the tone dial was introduced. And it says dual tone multi-frequency dialing, DTMF. What does that mean? It means that every single number would have two frequencies present. Why two frequencies per number? It's just to make sure that that number was pressed. Two specific frequencies had to be present, and the system, the central office equipment, would interpret that as a number. Why not just a single frequency tone per number? Well, you could pick up the phone and there could be TV or radio going on, and maybe there will be some music going on, and if some tone was detected from the song being played, the system would mistakenly take it as a number was dialed. So that could be a big mess. So that's why, Now, okay, so when you're talking about programming phone, because when you program the phone system, there are different sections. One of the section is programming the outside lines, the CO lines. And one of the first questions you're going to be asked is, do you want this line to be pulse or DTMF as far as dialing out? For the most part, pretty much 99.9999% plus more, you're going to have to select the DTMF. If you don't, you press the keypad, the key on the phone, and the phone system is going to dial in pulses, just as if it were a rotary phone. If you program this thing to be a DTMF, you press the button on the phone set and it produces that funny noise consisting of two frequencies. I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with how it sounds when you dial the phone. It's just not how to sound weird and pretty, but there are specific frequencies associated with the numbers. So you could have a service call saying that, well, we have a problem with our phone system. We can dial out, but we can't use the menus that are offered by the companies. Like, for example, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. Because once the other phone system picks up, it could be programmed to receive the choices. It could serve you the choices, and it could be programmed to receive the choices as it is serving them. So press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for something else. So the service call could be, we can dial out, but once we dial out and we're being asked for the menu to dial the numbers from the menu, we keep pressing them and nothing happens. We can't get to those menu items. Well, that's because the phone line was programmed to be a pulse dialing out. So yes, the central office, most of the central office equipment can still interpret and sense the pulse dialing. So it will connect you to wherever you need to be connected. But once you're connected, once the connection is made, the receiving end system can present you with the menu, and once you be pressing the buttons, you will be still pressing the pulses, and it will not understand the pulses. It will be looking for the tones. And since you're not dialing the tones, just the pulses, it will not understand your choices. So then you would have to go into line programming and make sure that all the lines are programmed as DTMF. Right? So, so that's one of the common things. And sometimes some of the older systems, they get deprogrammed. Maybe there's some spike in the line. Maybe there's something that resets the thing. And by default, it goes into the pulse lines. Now, it is 2:47 now. So if you need to go into another class, please go. This thing is being recorded. And once I'm done with that, I just don't want to stop it right now because we need to get on with the program later on. So I will continue, and you can catch the rest of it on YouTube. And if you still have any questions, then you can contact me in person, email, or whatnot. Right? So I just want you to know, I'm not holding you now. If you need to go, go. I'll just be talking to myself and post it on YouTube, right? So you can catch it later. All right, now here's another thing that says ground start. Ground start or loop start. All right, those ground start lines would be, there's only one line, one conductor per telephone line. And the other ground reference is completed by the ground itself. Old system, old ways of doing this, nobody in these days is using the ground start system. However, for some reason, the option, when you're programming the phone lines, the option is still there. I don't know why, but it's there. When you're programming the phones, make sure you program all those phone lines to be loop start, which means it takes two physical conductors, one pair per connection. That's what's presently used. DOD, direct outward dialing, or DID, direct inward dialing and hotline. All right, direct outward dialing. As soon as you pick up the handset, you get an outside line selected by itself. So you don't have to press 9 to get out, or you don't have to select a line. Bang, the first available line outside is selected. So you can program that phone set to be DOD. You can program a phone set to be, in somebody's office, to be DID. Pick up the handset and you get the intercom button activated. You get the dial tone, but it's not the outside dial tone. You get the inward dial tone, so you can dial somebody's extension. You can program a button to be DOD. You pick up the handset, nothing happens, and you press one of the buttons that says DOD. Or you can press a button that says DID. Usually that would be intercom button. And then dial the extension number, or you can dial the number. Now, hotline. It's a DID or DOD with a specific number dialed automatically, which means as soon as you pick up the handset, a number is being dialed automatically. Now, you can program the phone to dial somebody's extension, which would be within the phone system, or you can program the phone to select an outside line and dial. So that's called hotline. You can see a lot of those in some large department stores when you see those taxi phones. These are hotline phones. Those phones are on the wall with a handset, and they don't have a rotary dial. They don't have any number pad to dial, nothing. There's nothing to dial. You just pick up the handset, and those are being purchased by the taxi companies. If you need a taxi, you pick up the phone, and that phone is purchased by the taxi company that installed it there. They're paying for that phone, but when you pick up the phone, it dials their number. And usually you will be able to see the company names on those phones. So these are the hotline, hotline phones. Right? 911, we already talked about that about 10 minutes ago. Single line versus proprietary. Single line, we already talked about, I'm just going to touch up on this. Single line, it's a POTS line, single line set, single line telephone set, or POTS phone set, that's the same thing. POTS, proprietary set, well, if it's a Panasonic system, KSU, you will get appropriate proprietary telephone sets made by Panasonic for that particular KSU. Proprietary. If it's a Toshiba, you'll get Toshiba phone made for that system. And it will understand only the signal from that system. You plug in that phone into the single line set, POTS outlet, it will not work. Right? MOH, music on hold. Not a big philosophy, however, there's something that I need to mention about that. You call somebody and they say, "Can I put you on hold?" Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you have to. Okay, bang. You start hearing some stupid music by some idiot playing some Casio keyboard and calling that music, and you just deal with that. All right. Well, simple concept, right? But somebody got a pretty darn good idea about this. There are companies who offer music on hold service. What happens is that there are different companies all over the world offering that. What do? They give you, well, of course, it's for money, monthly service. It's a monthly paid service. They ship you a box, and that box is an audio box. It has a hard drive, it has some circuitry to record and play back audio. It will also have an Ethernet jack, so it could be connected to a network. It is not constantly connected it's connected to the network, but it's not constantly connected to the company. It is made so the company who is providing the MOH service, music on hold service, can log in to that box, upload the content, and disconnect. And what do they upload into that box? An audio file, 10-minute long, 5-minute long, whatever it is. And instead of the client, the customer, calling that facility or the business and say, "Can I put you on hold?" Yeah, sure. Instead of listening to the radio or whatever music that makes no sense, they are connected to that box, the audio output of that box, and they listen to promotions, specials, advertising that is associated with that particular company that they called. Some companies have the phone system programmed that it goes into that music on hold first for about a minute or so before it is being routed to the receptionist. Pretty clever thing. And so some companies do provide the music on hold, and your job would be to install that sometimes. Right? Dry contact relay, that is the dry contact relay associated with the paging interface. Audio is activated, the dry contact is activated in order to enable the input of the paging amplifier, so it's not on all the time producing all the hiss and noise. The input should be activated only for the time that the paging interface output would be connected. Right? CO line, central office line, that's telephone line. Single line, one line. Single line, central office, they're sort of the same thing. Single line is an office, central office line, and central office lines are being served as single lines, right? So it's a tip and ring, one pair per telephone line. Roll over. Okay, now this is when I need to create. There we go. I need to create a thing here, a board. Let's say we have a line. Here's a line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, okay? Line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. And each of those lines is going to have a specific phone number assigned to it. Right? Now, let's say there's a company that hires, I don't know, 30 people that sometimes they need to go on the phone. So for 30 people, maybe 5 lines, purchasing 5 telephone lines would be okay. And it would handle the load or the amount of conversations that at any time would be appropriate. Right? If you need more lines, because maybe there's those 30 people are telemarketers, then yeah, I would probably need 30 phone lines. Right? But if it's just a regular business selling, floor tiles or something like that, then once upon a time, somebody calls, somebody makes an outside call, then for 30 people, 5 lines, let's say for this one, is okay. Now, what happens is that if you need 4 lines for this, you're not going to publish 5 telephone numbers. You're going to publish only 1. What if you need 3 more? You're going to add 3 more. That would be too confusing. So rollover sequence was introduced. You publish only 1 of those, and you tell the provider company which line you want to be published, the published number. Now, if there's an outside incoming call from outside and dialing the published number, let's say line 1 is the published number. If line 1 is free, then line 1 is going to ring on the telephone system, on somebody's phone, usually a reception. If line 1 is busy because somebody is talking on that line from some of the office, whatever, then line 2 is going to ring. And if that is busy, then line 3 the phone call is going to come on line 3, and so on. And if it goes here, and if line 5 is busy, and it's going to try to look for line 1, see if it's busy. So it's a rolling over sequence. Same thing going through outside towards the other way, making outgoing calls. Those 5 lines can be included in a line pool that is programmed in the system. And if somebody dials out, they can select those. But that rollover has nothing to do with the line pool. You can include any line in a line pool for dialing out. But for dialing in, you only publish 1 number. But the phone call can be made once that phone number is dialed, then any of those phone lines can ring because they are included at the side of the provider. They set it up like that. If you need 3 or 4 more lines, you just add more. You get more, and you have to pay for. Yeah, thank you. You're going to have to pay for the additional 3 lines, but you don't have to change which number you have published. It's just the volume of phone calls have increased. So you need more lines. Thing is that if you have a phone here somewhere and you press 9 to dial out, and 9 is going to enable the feature, the line hunting feature. It's going to hunt for any available line that is included in the line pool. And let's say it found line 3 available, and that's the line it's going to use to make an outside call. Even though that line has its own individual number assigned to it, if that line is included in the rollover sequence, the call display on the other side of the destination is not going to show that number, it's going to show the published number. So that's how the line rollover works. Okay? Now, PBX, Private Branch Exchange, we talked about that. Here's an ELEC number. Okay, automatic number announcement circuit. Now, it is specific to the telephone company, telephone line provider. Now, we are in our area, for example, we have a lot of Bell lines, right? Bell telephone lines. Those numbers are being used by installers. So remember when I said a rollover sequence? Let's say you have another phone. There's a typical service call sometimes. Here's another line. Line 6. Now these 5 lines are included in a rollover sequence. That's supposed to be Q. All right. And this one here will be a fax line. All right. Everything makes sense. But what if somebody, maybe there's some installer that was having a bad day or whatnot, maybe something was mislabeled. They connected line, that number here, that line, instead of line 4 and line 4 to the fax machine. So the typical service call would be, well, sometimes when clients call us, we don't get the phone call, it doesn't come through to the reception, but the client hears a fax machine noise. And also, if somebody tries to send us a fax, it doesn't go, the fax machine doesn't ring. It just goes to the reception, and the reception picks up and they hear the fax noise, somebody trying to send us a fax. Well, then you would have to know, you would come over and you would have to have the list of the numbers that the company has purchased. You would tap into, on the BICS block level, tap into each individual line and make sure that these are the numbers that are supposed to be there, and then make sense out of it and get the fax number. Okay, so there was a service call I had, many of those, that the fax machine was connected instead of line 3, for example, and line 3 is connected to the fax machine, then that kind of a mess would happen. But in order to map out those lines and make sure that they are what they're supposed to be, you would have to find out what the numbers of those lines are. And if you tap in with your, it's called BUT set or installer's set, telephone, handset kind of a thing. If you tap into line 3 to make sure what that number is, and if you call your cell phone to see what's on the display, it's not going to show you this number, it's going to show you the published number, so you're out of luck. That's why we have this ELEC number. And if you connect your telephone set into that particular line, you tap into that line and dial this number. This is area code, so you have to know what area code you're in. You dial the area code that you're in and dial this number. Bell Canada automatic circuitry is going to pick up and is going to tell you by voice what number you're calling from. And that is going to tell you not necessarily the published line, but it's going to tell you each individual line that you tap into. So that's why we have the ELEC number, automatic number announcement circuit. That's if you have a POTS line. If it's a DSL line, then you're out of luck because there's no dial tone, nothing to connect, and you have to have something that is called a DSL line tester with a display. It's somewhat complex to use. You plug in, you press some buttons, and it shows you the number and some other analytic data that is going to. But if you don't have that, then you can't service the system, and you're just going to have to make sure that the technician from the provider company comes and relabels the lines. Right? KSU, key system unit. It's a phone system, just like private branch exchange. We talked about that already. We talked about POTS, which stands for plain old telephone service. It's the type of line, it's the most basic telephone line. Tip and ring for single line terminals. We don't call them plus and minus. We don't call them whatever else. We call them tip and ring, and we already talked about where does that come from. It comes from those old telephone exchanges where humans were sitting and patching phones using the quarter-inch jacks, same as the guitar plug, to patch cords, so one of the wires would be connected to the tip of the jack and the other one would be connected to the ring of the jack. So that's why we have tip and ring, and that terminology has stayed. ATA, we spent some time already talking about that. Analog telephone adapter. Battery present, pretty common thing to say. For example, there's a service call. The phone is dead. Phone line is dead. Can't make any lines. Can't make any phone calls. Well, first you're going to see if the line, if somebody dug a shovel and broke the line, so the line would be completely dead. Or is the line still connected? There's no problem with connection to the central office, but it's just maybe there's a problem with the central office equipment. Right? So you need to, So first, I need to see if battery is present, which means is there a 48 volts DC voltage present on that line? What's the simplest way to check? Well, connect your installer's set tap into that line and connect and disconnect one terminal. You're going to have some pop and crackle on the you're going to hear that in the headset. Right? Or you can just get your voltmeter and measure the damn thing. Right? So that means if there's a 48 volt DC, that means the line is still connected. There's no break in that line, except maybe there is a problem with the circuitry providing the dial tone. That would be at the provider's side. So that's why I said battery. Why is it called battery? It's because the DC voltage was provided by a huge banks of batteries at the central office, and that thing just stayed. The terminology has stayed. RJ, we already talked about. Registered jack. Trunk. What did I say here? A multiple telephone lines physically bound in one cable. Why do we call it trunk? There could be one huge cable having many, many, many pairs. And let's say this cable is servicing the east side of town. It's a small town, for example. So that would be called a trunk. Another trunk could be the west side of the town or the mid part of the town. So those would be trunks. Organized cables that are servicing certain area. And here it is. We went 10 minutes over time with this here. I hope you are going to, well, I wish you that you enjoy the Slack week that's coming up this 2024. Well, I wish you a happy and pleasant Slack reading week, whatever you want to call it. And I'll see you when you come back and when I come back. Nothing like a good plan. All right. Thank you guys and have a wonderful whatever you're going to have. All right, Carl.